Hey everybody, it's Tim Kawakami here, North and South Podcast with my co-host of Los Angeles Times, Dylan Hernandez. And I know you guys listen to this for sports. We know that it's a California podcast, but do have to bring up. I mean, Dylan, you're affected too. Everyone in LA is being affected by these terrible, scary fires in LA right now. We're recording this on Wednesday morning. I just want to make sure you're okay. You're you and your family okay, and
Yes, we are.
just
Yeah.
what's it like to be down there, knowing God, these fires are everywhere and can spread at any time.
Yeah, that was kind of scary. So I was covering the UCLA basketball game yesterday, and obviously I'm kind of following this on my phone and stuff. And, I think usually we're kind of used to, right? We do have fire, right? We have fire season here in LA, but it usually happens up in the hills. And what's kind of been scary here because of the winds and how fast they were, and just the way this fire could spread. All of a sudden now it's kind of jumping into like urban areas. And I think that was kind of scary. Was you just kind of didn't know where it was going to pop up, and it kind of became a thing too, where you start hearing about, things kind of happening in this city or that city, or, where we're right near the, elementary school that say that I went to,
Mm-hmm.
right. I have several friends who have parents that still live up there. All of a sudden there was a fire, but it turned out to not be a big deal. But everybody, all of a
You
sudden
never
you just
know.
kind of hear,
Yeah.
you don't know, so, so that's been kind of scary. And obviously, any of our listeners that are kind of in the affected areas, obviously, I just kind of wish them the best.
Thousands of homes lost. I'm sure there's so many things that people are losing. So far, I've not heard of any deaths, which thank God. Hopefully, that is how it continues. But I have friends with their power out and no idea when it's going to come back, and also not so sure if the fire is going to come their way, given which way the wind blows. But it is super scary. The images are terrible. I don't know. I mean, is it going to affect anything sporting wise, Dylan? I mean, I don't know. The smoke is everywhere.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, I look outside right now and it's just like, this orange, just this grayish orange color, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's everywhere. I can, you smell it. It smells like I'm having a campfire in my living room right now, so, and, obviously we're indoors here and we've closed all the windows and everything, but the fact that the smell is as strong as it is right now, I think says a lot about kind of the air quality and stuff. So, yeah, I am kind of curious about that.
With high winds, anything could happen. That's you think like, okay, it won't go over the freeways, but with a high wind, it just takes a couple sparks and they could go anywhere. So again, thinking everybody in LA, I'm thinking all of my friends and all our families down there. But again, we're a sports podcast. We just had to start with that, and I obviously was worried for you, Dylan. So I'm glad everything is good there. Hope everything is good for everybody. But you got playoff football down there. Chargers playing in Houston on Saturday. You kind of got the bookend games. You got the Chargers playing the first game in Houston. Houston always gets that first game on Saturday, and you've got the Rams hosting on Monday night to close. Hosting. I'm now blanking on who they're hosting. Who are they hosting?
The Vikings.
They play the Vikings. That's right, the number one wild card team, and the Rams being the lowest division. Which one is LA interested in? Obviously, putting the fires aside, we know so much is going to be diverted to that. But let's just talk about sports right here in our lane. Which one is a bigger deal to the fans in LA, to the fans of that region?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that the Rams have more fans still at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way it's kind of right, the seedings have kind of worked out, have kind of made maybe a Chargers run a little more possible, right? I think you kind of look at those first round matchups.
They got a great matchup.
Yeah. And they had to go to, they beat a very bad Vegas team to clinch that, right, to secure that, because if not, they would be in Baltimore, and that's a whole different thing. Baltimore just crushed them earlier this year, but the fact that they were able to win in Vegas, again, it's a bad team, but we've seen Charger teams in the past, right? That was the type of game they could have lost and basically just ended their season by going to Baltimore. So because of the matchup, I think you kind of feel pretty decent about that. They've dodged a bullet of sorts. Rashawn Slater did not play in that Raider game. He felt something in his knee, evidently, during pregame warmups. They were concerned enough to where Harbaugh said after the game, hey, he's going to have an MRI. But yesterday, he was out there, he practiced. So I think he's a go. Obviously, you lose a guy like that, and all of a sudden it changes the calculus of everything.
Left tackle,
left
kind of
tackle
position, position.
Yeah. Against the Raiders, they were able to get away with it. They moved Joe Alt over to that side, and they were able to get away with it. But so I think they're in pretty decent shape here. They're in pretty good position to make something happen. Herbert, I thought played well in this last game. And again, they just kind of have that thing, right? That I think is kind of that belief, and they have that thing that good teams do, where they didn't have a great first half, and they were able to just kind of figure it out, and kind of get right and win pretty comfortably in the end, so they're not the Chargers of the past, and just because of that, they don't feel like a team that's just going to kind of go on the road and just kind of like implode like some of the teams in the past have done. So I kind of like them in this first.
Yeah, I mean
matchup.
they do have a chance to really catch people's imagination. I think they kind of have already. You go on a little run. I mean, you win that game, and then I don't know. The next game might be against probably at Buffalo, which would be very difficult. But you have a chance to get things going, to feel like you've got real momentum. I mean, they've already got it. Harbaugh's giving it to them, but I just think in that city, in the NFL, with that quarterback, knowing he's still young, can add some things. They have a receiver now who caught some passes. Quentin Johnson, my goodness, I saw him catch some passes. Could be very interesting. I mean, what's your sense of the Rams? Can the Rams make a run? I mean, it feels kind of weird that they're in even, after the season that they had, and now they're just hey, we're just a playoff team, man. That's what we are. I give Sean McVay a lot of credit for kind of patching this one together.
Yeah, I think they're in a weird way kind of flying under the radar here, just because this isn't kind of the Rams that you think about, right? You think about kind of high-powered offense, right? The offense kind of carrying a lot of the load there. And, you got Matthew Stafford. He's only thrown for 1 touchdown in the last 3 games. So you kind of look at that and you're like, okay, well, how are they going to win these games? Well, they've won 9 out of their last 12 now. I think since during that span, opponents have only been scoring 17 points a game against them. They have this young defense. I think they're 5 rookies starting for them there. But they are just stopping people, and I think that was kind of a big question, right? You lose Aaron Donald, what's going to happen? I think we talked about it on this very program, right? I mean, even, guys like Kobe Turner that had really good seasons last year. Okay, when, Aaron Donald's not taking up 3 guys, how good is he going to be? Well, a lot of these guys turned out to actually be pretty good. And, so I think, they have I think they have a pretty decent shot here, right? I don't think Minnesota's invincible. It's going to be kind of interesting, for Sam Darnold. Obviously, this is where he really kind of made his name, as a quarterback at USC. So it's a homecoming of sorts for him. But yeah, in some ways, I think that they, might be the better of the two LA teams right now. It's just that, again, just because it's so different than I think what we're used to seeing from the Rams, people have kind of not really noticed what's going on here.
Well, I am thinking about it. Ramsey kind of could determine whether Sam Darnold returns to the Vikings or not. He didn't play great in a big game against the Lions. Listen, it's 1 game. He's had a great season. But they do have J.J. McCarthy there, the number 1 pick, who got hurt. And Darnold's played great, and they've been great. But you don't look so good in a huge game for the number 1 seed to end the regular season. And then if you don't look great against the Rams, I can't see them going, okay, $40 million. That's it. You're our guy. We'll sit J.J. McCarthy. I think it was headed that way, but you stiff out on 2 games would not be great. Now, he could play very well and they could lose. That's a different equation. But if he doesn't play very well, the Rams defense finds a way to trick him around a little bit. They could determine a lot of interesting things for that quarterback situation. For an SC kid, right? I mean, for a guy that LA fans know so well. Very interesting stuff. I will be watching, and I don't think either team, and I'm sure you agree, is likely to get to the Super Bowl, but they're interesting teams. They're well coached. I think as the 49ers fans look at them and go, how did the Rams get in there and 49ers didn't, given the 49ers have still, with the injuries, have all these frontline players. It's an interesting way that McVay did it. He's been more consistent than Kyle Shanahan. There's no question. He's made the playoffs more often. He's made the playoffs with much more kind of jiggering around and having to figure stuff out. 49ers don't tend to do great when they have to figure stuff out. They do it the way they do it. And if they roll out the ball and they just crush you, then they're great. And that's a good thing to have. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's just to kind of wait a minute, 2, 3, 4 pieces are down. What do we do? There's been a little bit of an issue there. So moving over to 49ers, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are having their much anticipated end of season presser. We've been waiting for it. It's been delayed. They wanted to make a decision on defensive coordinator first, clearly, because last year they did the press conference and then fired Steve Wilkes, and they had to throw together a conference call about that. And that was not a great experience for anybody. It was not the way to do it. They recognize that. and they made a decision to fire Nick Sorensen, defensive coordinator. They want to keep him on staff. That's why I've been hearing for like a week or so that maybe move him to special teams, because they also fired their special teams coordinator, Brian Schneider. That didn't take any time. That one they did as soon as the season was over, because that special teams was terrible and lost them 2 games. But it's going to be interesting. They have some familiar names they could go to. Jeff Ulbrich was the guy they wanted last year, but the Jets blocked him. Becomes interim head coach when they fire Robert Saleh. But that's Robert Saleh, former 49ers defensive coordinator. I think those 2 names certainly would be at the top of the list. Kind of a blend of familiarity with, just a little, more experience. That's what I got from people in the locker room yesterday, was that everyone likes Nick Sorensen, nice guy. But if you talk to him, you don't feel this leadership thing. You don't feel it. Now, there are guys who don't come off well at press conferences and are leaders in the room, but you never kind of got that kind of a mumbly guy, kind of a get along that everyone likes, but maybe cannot command a defense, command a room, command a play sheet. And they're going to go to somebody with experience. I'd be very surprised if it's not somebody who has been a defensive coordinator for at least a couple of years, has run that system. They might make some tweaks to it. And by the way, guess who it's not going to be? Dylan Hernandez.
Since you frame it like that, Brandon Staley.
It will not be Brandon Staley. I would be shocked if it's Brandon Staley. I just said, experience. He's got experience. He's been head coach. He's been defensive coordinator. The fit was never great with him. I mean, it just wasn't. And you could have probably told, like, this is not a Brandon Staley kind of organization. This is not a guy, and I'll just hate to say, like, who speaks off the record tons to reporters. That's not what this organization is. And I'm not saying he was doing that with the 49ers. I'm sure he was doing it before that. That's not them. And I didn't really get it, other than, okay, he's really smart and he's not a bad person. I just didn't think there was a great schematic and personality fit. And that's what I've heard back is it didn't feel like he was part of it, part of the culture. Nick Sorensen is part of the culture. That's why they want to keep him on board. He's just not ready for that job and may never be a fit for that job. It's a big job. You run the defense. Kyle Shanahan does not touch the defense. Now, John Lynch might a little bit, but you need a personality that commands football players. And Saleh or Ulbrich, I think, was where they would start. There's some other guys, I'm sure, out there. I think the guy that Shanahan really wanted was Bill Belichick, but he's otherwise occupied at this point. But you kind of want, like, this is our defense. This is our room. This is our culture. Ulbrich or Saleh would be 2 guys. I did not know that Saleh would necessarily want it. We'll see. He's got head coaching interviews, but it wouldn't be a terrible move for him to come back to 49ers and try to get another head coaching job.
Now, I saw you write about, Purdy, obviously, and it's going to be kind of this big, right? I mean, whenever you sign your quarterback to these deals, it changes kind of everything. How did this season and how the way he played, how do you think that kind of affected the type of deal he's going to
I think it took the top end off. Like, I don't know that he was ever going to try to get 60, or the 49ers were ever going to be willing to go get 60. Like, just break to Prescott. Dak Prescott's making 60. We got to reset the market. Every quarterback who comes at it, who's a starting quarterback with Pro Bowl credentials, resets the market. It's just what you do. Every single Trevor Lawrence and this, then. I don't think that was going to happen, but it's absolutely not going to happen now. It might have taken off, all the way down to 52, which is top 10. It probably put him in the top 10, and they're not top 3, top 5. I think it also means, I think the 49ers are going to want some protection. With a quarterback, you have to pay them a lot of money, but maybe limit the guarantees so they can get out of it after 2. The way that the Rams did with Jared Goff. Like, when they signed him to a really great deal, they still could get out of it when they wanted Matt Stafford and they didn't want him anymore. It will cost them some money, but not crazy. It's not going to be a Deshaun Watson guarantee package. It's going to be something where theoretically you want this guy forever, but you could get out after 2 or 3. And he's okay with that because he's 25 years old. He wants another bite of the apple too in 2 or 3 years. I think it'll be designed that way. I'm speculating the top 12, top 11, which is like 51 million, right at the Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, right in there. Goff is in there too right now. This season was not good. He was not that good, but he was okay. It was like everything fell apart. Purdy's numbers decreased. He wasn't the same guy, but he didn't go through the bottom of the floor. There was maintained a sense of still he's a good quarterback. Still he's holding some things together. He's not winning it on his own, but that's not who he is. He's a guy who can hold you to a certain level, and then when things are better around him, can win a ton of games. that's worth a lot of money in the NFL. It's not worth Lamar Jackson. It's not worth Josh Allen. It's not worth Patrick Mahomes, but it's worth a lot. Again, is he a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa? Yeah, it doesn't. Contracts don't necessarily work that way, but I'd say yes. Is he better than Sam Darnold? I'd say yes. Is he better than Kirk Cousins? Yes. Like you kind of have to measure it that way. I think maybe the ceiling's been lowered for him. Honestly, no question. Like he's just not going to be a top 3, top 5 quarterback, and I think he kind of was verging on that last year, kind of in a Drew Brees way. But I think you're top 10, top 11, and you have to pay those guys, and you give yourself a little bit of an out. I think it just makes sense. Like I've said 4-year and 150 million in that term, whatever 50 years. So 4 years, 200. That's right. 50 plus 50 plus 50 plus 50 would be 200, but 125 guaranteed. So you get basically 2.5 years guaranteed. So if they get out of you, they have to still pay you a half year. It's not going to be reported that way. It's not going to look that way. But when you really look at the way the agents and the way the negotiators look at it, it's basically going to be guaranteed for 2.5 years. No matter what, he's going to get $125 million. That's pretty good. And if he's cut after 2, that means over $16 million for 2 years. The 49ers would not want that, but they take the hit if they had to get out of it. It's just not going to be $260 million with 180 guaranteed. And that's kind of how you measure this. But they want him, they need him. They need to start this offseason with him. And he has said that. He was very clear about that on the cleanout day on Monday. He wants to get to start. He wants to go in, the phase 1, which is just get on the field, start throwing the ball around. He wants to be with his receivers, whoever's there, presuming they're all show up. He wants to be there for mini camp. He wants to obviously be there for training camp. And I think he's not going to ask for the moon, going to ask for more than they want to pay. They're going to have to negotiate, but they can't blow this one. They cannot repeat the Brandon Ayuk thing. They misread that one. Ayuk played it out. It was crazy. I just don't think that's not who Purdy's personality is, and that's not the way they can play this with a quarterback. You cannot have this go. If this goes past March, Dylan, and we're doing the show, I'll say it. They're in trouble. They're in trouble with this one. I don't see it going past March. Quarterback deals tend to be done faster than that, or the understanding of them tends to be faster than that. I think this one might be done by February.
Are there any other kind of like to-do things for them?
Drake Greenlaw's a free agent. That's one. I mean, they want him back, but he's only played 2 games, 1.5 games. So I don't think that's a huge negotiation. George Kittle is owed an extension. There's some little things like that, but nothing big. They dealt with, Ayuk obviously last year, Trent Williams extension last year, Christian McCaffrey extension last year. So like Javarius Ward likely is to depart as a free agent. There's other guys who are likely to, they're like to lose as a free agent, but not any huge ones that I can think. I might be missing somebody, but it's Purdy. Purdy is the one. Got to deal with Debo, decide whether they want Debo back. I think they will maybe extend him at a lower number. They have kind of gone through most of their big ones, and it's possible that Kittle is a holdout, but he's not the quarterback. I think they will get that done. That's kind of a typical 49er. Bring it to the training camp. He's got a year left. He deserves everything you can pay him. So that one might go into July. I don't think it's going to be too pressing. And they got a few others. Nothing killer. Nothing other than Purdy. Like that was the one. They blow that one, or there's some weird development there. That could be a problem for the entire season, the way Ayuk was, and it would be more dramatic than Ayuk. I just don't think it's set up for that. I don't think the personality is set up for that. I think the 49ers are fine with paying him a lot of money. It's just going to be a negotiation. Is it going to be 48 a year? Is it going to be 52 a year? What's the guaranteed number going to be? 100 million guaranteed? Is it going to be 130 million? Those are the things that they're going to have to discuss over the next few weeks. I think it can get done pretty quickly, and there is incredible motivation to get it done quickly.
Well, obviously coming into the season, we're talking about the Niners, right, as a potential Super Bowl contender, maybe even the favorites. But you kind of look back at it. Well, they were coming off kind of the short off season. Now they're going to get the benefit of the longer off season. And they're going to, it's going to be more or less the same team. You kind of seeing what the Rams are doing right now with what they're building on. How do you, I know it's really, really early, really, really early. The Rams aren't even done playing yet. But as you kind of look ahead here, next year, the next couple of years, how do you think that this division shapes up?
I think it's 49ers Rams. I really do. I mean, Seattle's a solid team, but the quarterback isn't up to the same level. I just don't think. They got to re-sign him too. I think they kind of hit a ceiling there with Geno Smith, who I like. He's just not a guy that you really can bank in 11 wins. Geno Smith, I can't do that. And I think you can with Stafford if he's healthy. You can with Sean McVay, just a proven guy. When he's got the right things, he can go win a division. 49ers have proven that they can go win the number 1 seed when things are right. I think it's those two teams. It should be those two teams, McVay and Shanahan. I think the 49ers are better if everybody's healthy, but everybody isn't always healthy. That's the way life goes. You got to figure it out. They got to draft well again. They have to plug some pieces. They have to fix that defense. But let's say they get the defense was like the 20th ranked in the league this year. That's not 49ers like. That's what cost Sorensen his job. They get it to top 10 again, which they normally have been. They should write in 11 wins. And the Rams can write in 10. And then there's wiggle room from there. But the 49ers are getting that last place schedule, Dylan. Yeah. That is a huge deal. Last time they got it, they went 13-4, won 10 in a row to end the season. Number 1 seed. Not saying it's a guarantee. We've seen many 4th place teams get the 4th place schedule and become a 4th place team again because they're terrible. I don't see that happen. I think the 49ers are going to have a really good year. I'd put them at 12 next year. Just given the schedule, given everything that went wrong for them this season, likely isn't going to be 100% of those problems next season. Likely won't be worse. Who knows? Maybe it will. If they get Purdy in by March and they get a full offseason from McCaffrey, a full offseason from, we'll see with Trent Williams, full offseason from Debo and Ayuk and things that they didn't get last season, I think they would be pitched towards a good run at the Rams and maybe be slightly favored over the Rams.
Yeah, like you mentioned about the schedule, not to take anything away from the Chargers at all, but that schedule definitely helped them, get to the position they are right now. So.
Well, just put it this way. The 49ers, due to the schedule, the placement, 49ers played the Chiefs in this rotation. The Rams played the Raiders. Like that's a little bit of, that's a little bit of a difference there for the way teams operate. So, but it's interesting, the Purdy thing is something to watch. And I expect that if they get past like, the combine late February and he's not done and John Lynch is having to talk about it in February 28th, there will be some red flags raised. I think it will be done before that. So we'll be talking about it through then. We'll be talking about it.
Well, now putting on your basketball GM hat, you don't like Jimmy.
No, well, Jimmy I don't like Jimmy at 35.
I get it. It's kind of fun though, right? I mean, from a person whose livelihood is not at stake at this thing, just as as a show, I would kind of like to see it.
Listen, he's an interesting guy. He's a great player. It's just a circus. Listen, the Warriors are bad right now. I was there last night. I mean, Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy Jr. having an animated conversation as writers are walking past them in the hallway that we walk past them at Chase Center. Doesn't mean anything big is happening. It means that Joe Lacob is pissed off. And of course, you just look at him on the sideline, you can tell he's pissed off. They don't look good. Terrible loss last night to Miami, coming off a back-to-back after a 2 overtime game. And they obviously don't have Jimmy Butler, and the Warriors could not score. They need some more stuff. Dennis Schroeder, the guy that I told them to trade for, I expected them to trade for, has been terrible, just terrible. And they're missing Kuminga now, and I might be writing about that. It just really kind of has frozen the team. They don't have another guy who does that. This whole period is supposed to be judging what they do with Kuminga. I think they got to keep him just because they don't have anything like him, unless they could trade him for something that's better than him, which I don't think they can before February. I think they almost got to say, yeah, you know what? You're our guy. It's going to cost us $40 million a year. We got to bite the bullet, and we're going to have to pay you. And then, hopefully you grow. And then in 2 years, it doesn't work, they can trade them. That they're kind of like a slow, tired, aging team right now. And we know these things about them. They still have Steph, so they can elevate. They can elevate. He's having good shooting nights, and they're still losing, which is a gruesome thing for them, and is increasingly disappointed, demoralized Steph Curry at these pressers. It's really something. He's not gonna say get me out of here, but he's gonna say what can we do to get better. And I think they're gonna trade for somebody by February 6th. They still got some time. Nikola Vucevic would fit them perfectly. Again, would not make them a championship team, but they're getting no offense from their center. Trace Jackson Davis scored 17 last night, but it was a sloppy 17 that was meaningless because they were just giving him those points because to stop other things. He's been not good this season. Steve Kerr bit the head off a reporter who just was trying to throw him a softball about, hey, at least Trace, he stepped up. And like, I'm not going to praise him. I'm not going to praise anybody. 70 points. So what? So what? And a little bit of indication where they are.
Yeah.
I would not have asked that question because Trace actually wasn't very good. He did score points. So, it's fair for the reporter to ask about it. It just was kind of a sign of the moment. They need other stuff. They thought Schroeder was going to help them there. Schroeder has, for whatever, he's not doing anything that he was doing with the Nets this season. He's not doing anything that he is with Germany, where he's just this live wire leader, dynamic scorer, and he cannot put the ball in the basket. And you could tell he had a wedgie on an open three-pointer. That's hard to do. That's really hard to do. You have to shoot it way off to do that. And you could tell his confidence is off. I think they're going to trade Schroeder. They can package him with a couple other contracts and get Vucevic, package him to get something else. And again, it doesn't mean that they're going to be the number 4 seed, but try to get the 6. Maybe you're the 7 and you're in the play-in, but you get a home game to play in. They got to do something like that because, as Marcus Slater and I are talking on our podcast, Warriors Plus Minus, it's like just to have Steph not be so depressed, like to see a light at the end of the tunnel here. Because there is not one. They're 18-18. All things are not over. But, man, they cannot score. And in this league, everybody's got scores, multi-layered scorers. Miami, which is not a great scoring team, without Jimmy Butler, has got guys who are like dribbling, pump fake through the lane, scoring, pass it out, kick out, 3-point. Warriors just don't have that. They got a bunch of guys who don't want to shoot it and aren't good at creating their own shot. They had one guy, Steph Curry. They had another guy, Jonathan Kuminga, and now it's just Steph Curry, and it's really looking weird. Now they got this road trip coming up, not a bunch of tough teams, Detroit, Indianapolis, Washington, and one other team. They could go 3-1, and then life feels better. I don't think they're going to. 2-2 would kind of keep things, balanced maybe a little bit. 1-3 would be a disaster, and then I think that we'd see a trade. I think there's going to be a trade. And we shall see from there. They're all looking up at those powerhouse Lakers, though, who are winning games, losing games, winning games, whatever. I'll give them credit. They're keeping their head above water, and I'm not quite sure how they're doing. How are they doing it, Dylan Hernandez?
Well, they, and I think they have really kind of gone all in on this project Austin Reaves, it feels like, right? I mean, he had the, big game-winning basket against the Warriors, and that kind of got him started on this run. And I think a lot of that was related to the D'Angelo Russell trade, right? I mean, that was as much about clearing Russell, getting Russell out of there so they can get Reaves on the ball more.
Which is smart.
And look, he responded. I was at a game last week where he scored 35 points, almost had a triple-double. Last night at Dallas, he was minus 25, right? Shot 30. And that's kind of that's the issue that we're talking about here, right? And, and we've been talking about this for a while is, can he be the third best player on a championship team? I have always kind of doubted it, if I'm going to be honest. But like now they're, but I was talking to a scout, who, again, last week, who was just kind of like, well, there's no real trade out there for him. For the Lakers, right? So they're kind of stuck on this thing, and given what they have, they might as well kind of push in here and just kind of see what they have with this guy, right? I think Reaves is kind of one of these, smart, hardworking, overachiever types, and you know what? They're going to give him, the organization obviously loves him because, they picked him up as an undrafted free agent. So I think the front office kind of takes pride in, hey, this is the guy we found and nurtured and developed. So they're going to give him as much rope, I think, as they possibly can. But I'm not really sure, again, that they can really put together a team here that can win a championship. I mean, there's no real, it doesn't sound like they're going to be in, on kind of any of those higher end trades, the Jimmy Butler, Zach LaVine type thing, right? I just don't think any of that's going to happen. It doesn't sound like
Russell was their way into that, right? Russell was their way into it. And I mean, it's hard to see how they would put it together unless they're putting AD or LeBron into it, and they're not doing that. So, but I give them credit. They're piling out schemes, and I think Austin Reaves is not a bad player. So he's the guy, the third guy who's worth trying to do it with. The Warriors would love to have Austin Reaves. Tell you that they'd love to have anybody who's like Austin Reaves. Okay, we got to finish this with Roki Sasaki. Uh, Meeting with teams. There seems like to be like a final five, maybe. Who knows? Dodgers, Padres, Giants are in there. I might quite. There's a couple others that he's taking meetings with. Padres, I would think would be the Dodgers' main threat in this. What do you think, Dylan?
Yeah, now I'm starting. Joe Wolf. So I think right after Sasaki went back around, I think it might have been a little bit after Christmas. Joe Wolf, his agent, had a conference call where he spoke to the media, and he said one thing that kind of got my attention, which is that Sasaki. He said Sasaki looked at Ohtani and saw the fact that like it took Ohtani a few years to kind of get acclimated to the major league, to the major leagues and become the player he is now. And, that he understands he's not a finished product and that it's going to take him some time, And so given that, right, like I thought, if he had the mindset that like, hey, I'm already the guy, I'm going to go for a Cy Young as a rookie and kind of, right, shock the world type thing. I thought that would hurt the Dodgers' chances. When I kind of hear Wolf say this, the one big advantage the Dodgers have is that because Ohtani's in the rotation, you have to go to 6-man, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, just kind of the way Wolf sounded. I'm not sure this guy's going to jump into a situation where he's going to have to be a part of a 5-man rotation after having pitched once a week in Japan for his entire career, or where he's going to have to be like the ace right away. Kind of sounds like this guy's taking a kind of a cautious, more measured type of approach to this thing. And again, because Ohtani is there, they have to go 6. They have the depth to go 6. Other teams might try to go 6, but they can't really pull it off, right, without it actually hurting them. And so just because of the Dodgers pitching depth, I'm kind of starting to think now that that's where he's going to end up.
He doesn't have any like childhood posters of Justin Verlander up on his wall or anything like that, where he's always wanted to play with him. And people are asking like, maybe is his hero Justin Verlander? Because that's why the Giants signed him. I don't know about that one. I don't know. Who knows? You never know this stuff. But would you think adding Justin Verlander means anything for Roki Sasaki?
I mean, it could, again, like we haven't really heard too much from this kid directly, right? I mean, and this goes back to the time he was in high school. We really don't know too much, so sure, like anything is possible, I mean, that said, again, I just think that and kind of going back to this thing, he's always kind of taken, when he was in high school, right? And in Japan, these tournaments kind of start, right? The big summer tournament starts at the local level, single elimination. You win the prefecture championship, and then you go to Koshien, which is kind of the big summer tournament. It's the biggest sporting event in Japan. Now, if you have an ace, that guy pitches every single game, right? He pitches every game of the prefecture tournament. Mm-hmm. He pitches every day in Koshien, sometimes back-to-back games. When this kid got to the final, his coach sat him out. Right now, his high school coach played in an independent league in the United States, right? So he was kind of more, right? I think he had more of an American view of these things in terms of like, hey, this kid's a millionaire, right? He's a future millionaire. I'm not going to jeopardize his future over this, right? Now in Japan, typically the way it is though is that these kids practice every day, right? During the summers, they like live at the school, so that they can practice all day. And so in Japan, it's kind of viewed more that like, hey, it's kind of disrespectful to everybody else if you put yourself ahead of the team because everybody has been giving everything they have to this thing. And so the fact that, again, he broke from tradition, did that, and even, when he signed with Chiba Lotte, that team really kind of took care of him, right? They gave him time off. He didn't pitch at all his first year, like literally 0 games, whenever he needed time off, they gave it to him. He's missed months at a time. And so he's kind of used to, he's not kind of the typical Japanese pitcher who's going to like come over here and kind of be, he might say the right things, but be upset that like, hey, they didn't let me throw 130 pitches today. I was just getting warmed up at 100. I've heard that before many times. I was just getting warmed up and they pulled me out. This doesn't seem to be that kid. So I do think again that the Dodgers will be better positioned to kind of manage his workload. Now, the one thing you could argue against the Dodgers is the fact that the number of young pitchers they have actually hurt, right? And so again, if this guy's looking kind of long term and he's had some elbow issues in the past, maybe he will question, right? And my guess is that this will come up when they talk. Is like, hey, why are so many of your guys getting injured? And I'm sure the Dodgers will have some kind of answer to at least try to convince them that this is the right place. But so it's going to be kind of interesting. But again, I kind of think that Right? It sounds like he's got a relationship of sorts with Yamamoto. And now that kind of, again, right, when Wolves kind of says he's kind of taking this longer view of this thing, I'm kind of starting to think that the Dodgers kind of make sense there.
There we go. Dylan Hernandez. Aggregate that. Aggregate Dylan Hernandez, the expert on all things, Roki Sasaki. So we'll see. I don't think the Giants are getting him, but I still wonder about Padres, but we shall see. Everyone.
Well, you saw what's happening there, though, right?
What?
Well, the Sidlers are all suing each other.
I know.
Yeah,
yeah. That.
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but is that? I mean, that we'll see. I mean, I just don't think his contract the number isn't going to be a problem to anybody there. The next contract would be, but I understand there. I mean, they might have to be sending out some salaries. Yeah, you might not love that if you're considering them. You're not going to have Dylan Cease there, which has already been certainly rumored. You might not have Manny Machado there. Whatever. I get that. All right, Dylan.
I got one more thing actually that I want to mention.
Go.
I'm guessing you missed this because I almost missed it myself. Did you see the LiAngelo Ball song, or have you heard it?
No, I have not heard the song.
He put out a rap record over the weekend, which in, I don't know, like 2005 would have been like a huge hit. As it is, it's a pretty good song. I don't know if you noticed, but the Lions played it in their locker room after they won.
Wow,
the Bulls played it in their locker room after a recent win. So it's been the Cavs. I saw Donovan Mitchell was doing a post-game interview, and the guy at the lock, whoever was sitting next to him, started playing the song.
Wow.
So it's making the rounds. That's going to be the song of 2025.
That's the song of North and South. We're going to make that our song. It's our anthem. Dylan Hernandez, you are always one with the hip hop culture. You're the one bringing us to the kids, to the streets, and to the NBA locker rooms. All right, Dylan, appreciate it.
All right, see ya.
That's the show for today. Stay safe.